Welcome to a 1v1 game between PartinG and Coffee. This is the Stormgate Devastator Beta build, which is a little outdated now, but we've just received this pack of games from Frost Giant for us to cast. Disclaimer, this is a raw feed that we are actually using for this one, so I'm not in control of the camera. But we have PartinG playing as the Infernals in purple, spawning to the southeast of the map, and to the northwest. Actually, I'm confusing east and west here. Top right is going to be Coffee, playing as the Vanguard in the color teal, and then PartinG is bottom left, playing as the purple Infernals. As a mandatory disclaimer, as I always like to say at the beginning of these casts, I'm still in the process of learning this game just like everybody else, so bear with me if the casting is a little choppy at times, but hopefully it's going to be enjoyable. Anyway, Scout moving out here quite quickly, something that you very commonly see in these Vanguard versus Infernals matchups, something that you can use to kind of figure out if your opponent is going for a more aggro opening with multiple Iron Vaults, or whether your opponent is going to play into a second Shrine and expand quickly. And it's also something that you can use to harass those imps and idle some workers of your opponent. Now it looks like we will have a second base being built here on both of these players, or both of these, for both of these players you're building a second base. We are playing this game on Broken Crown Hinterlands as the map, by the way. And one thing that you need to know about this map in particular is that you have a lot of resource camps in the middle. You can see those triangle-shaped icons on the minimap in gray. Those icons represent resource camps that you can essentially get some extra resources for yourself. But this map has a lot of resource camps, all focused towards the middle. So that part of the map is actually very valuable, especially when those resource camps becomes available. Of course, once you take it, there is a cooldown on it, but every once in a while there's a window when that part of the map is very valuable. Root kind of marching into the enemy base over here. Bob's casually overcharging to repel this aggression. Scout also coming in. Bob's trying to cut off the escape path for this Brute over here. There's a second Brute as well. Nice little surround by our teal player here, Coffee, but this is a tough one. This is a very, very tough one because as much as you kind of have repelled these Brutes to a certain extent, you are still idling your workers, and this second base is currently unusable for Coffee. Now, one thing I want to touch on is that PartinG is probably the best Stormgate player right now, at least based on performance in various alpha tournaments. It's not really a big tournament. We're not talking about prize money, nothing like that. It's just, internal tournaments, little 1v1s, and in general, PartinG has been absolutely monstrous in those. So, here in this one, he is putting a lot of pressure on this expansion base from his opponent, and that's something that Coffee is struggling to deal with right now. He's trying to fight fire with fire, bringing in his own Lancers to deal with the Brutes, but I just feel like that in itself isn't going to be great, because this is where we could see some Gaunts appearing, potentially, from PartinG, or he could just say, look, you are using a relatively slow-moving melee unit to try and fight my my Brutes. I'm just going to expand like he does to the north of his base, third base coming in for him, and it looks like now these Brutes are starting to take the resource camps. Now, the one that PartinG just took was the closest to his opponent, so it looks like PartinG will be able to take all 4 of these resource camps, which is as good as it gets early game. You feel like he has really managed to leverage this momentum that he's gotten from this early aggression. And indeed, 4 Conclaves have been dropped here by PartinG. Conclaves early on is something that you use to make Gaunts, and Gaunts can be devastating here because that's a unit that will eventually infest enemy troops, and those infested troops, when they get killed, they will turn into fiends for the Infernals. And in a setup like this, where you don't really have a lot of super sturdy troops for the Vanguard's player, that could be devastating. He's marching through the map with a couple of Lancers here. Vision Camp, I don't think it revealed those troops. I think they are just marching outside of that little vision cone it's giving. So PartinG might not have seen these Lancers coming through. I think he's looking for the resource camps. Coffee does. But he's gonna be disappointed to see that every one of those resource camps have been taken already. I love this chop through, by the way. He actually used an imp to chop through the wood line here. And this allows him to expand towards this position fairly quickly. He doesn't need to walk all around. And his base remains very well connected. I love the actual doggy dog placeholder. One of my favorite placeholders in these betas. You have quite a few of those, but the flying dog, the static dog, those are the best, I feel. Anyway, a lot of conclaves over here. And yeah, there come the Gaunts. Quite a few of the Brutes available as well, and a Magmadon. Magmadon is going to be great stunning those melee troops. And I feel like Coffee's position here is just... I don't want to say abysmal, because that might be an overstatement. But I just don't feel like he's got what it takes to hold this. I don't see many static defenses. Indeed, not a single turret, not a lot of troops over here, and definitely not something that can deal with such a force of brutes. Magmadon could jump in and try to stun. It has not done just yet. A Hedgehog is out, but gets taken out immediately. Now the stun comes in, Bob's getting overcharged. For the time being, it looks like PartinG will retreat. Magmadon gets caught in the crossfire, but I think crucially, PartinG was able to retain all these Gaunts, and those escalate games very, very quickly. Gaunts individually aren't spectacular, but once you have a large crew of them, they actually become very devastating. A fourth base is coming in as well from PartinG. You really love to see this little double dip. He is aggressive, but he's also not all-inning by any means. As you see, there is the sensor drone. Talk about the flying dog I mentioned a couple of seconds ago. So it's not like he is going for an all-in aggression here. He actually has a lot of eco behind this, and you know, a lot of expansion already done. Gaunts taking this fight with no front line in front of them anymore. But there's a new Magmadon coming in, and you really feel like PartinG has no desire to push into the enemy base over here, especially with that turret now being there. But he doesn't even need to. He's got so much map control here. He has 4 bases against 2 from his opponent. He's actually trying to control this choke point, limiting his opponent from moving out of his base and establishing a 3rd base. And at the same time, those resource camps are getting close to being replenished once again, and that's going to give a big boost to PartinG as well. Nice little stun here with the Magmadon, Vulcan out there, but the Vulcan itself got stunned, and it is just getting absolutely eaten alive by these Infernal troops. Tower gets taken out as well, and there's just no standing army here for Coffee to hold this. Infestation comes in as well. Those infested units turning into Fiends, and now the Fiends are just swarming the enemy base. The poor medtech just getting eaten alive here. Nothing left standing here for Coffee, and you feel like a GG is inevitable. His 2nd base is gonna be gone. Just no chance of cleaning this one up anymore. And PartinG showing why he's one of the best players in these alphas. He is going to take game number 1 here, I feel. Yep, there it is. There ends the feed. That's how we know that a GG has been called. I know, it's a little weird-ish. Production obviously isn't spectacular right now. We're working with the tools we have. But it is what it is. Game number 1 complete. PartinG looking very powerful in this matchup, as we'll be heading into game number 2. It is going to be on Jagged Maw, a map that's fundamentally different from Broken Crown Hinterlands. Here on Jagged Maw, you spawn a lot closer to your opponent, as you both spawn on the eastern flank of the map. You have less resource deposits to work with, and both of those are actually fairly close to one of their respective players. But what's more important is that you do have a siege camp in the middle, and it's something that you can leverage eventually. It's fairly well guarded, so that little mangonel placeholder, that siege weapon that you can get from it, is something that's going to take some time for you to actually get. But those are actually one of the bigger things on this map. As it's also highlighted here by the Observer, who I think is still a Biomorph, there is also a formation of rocks in the middle of the map that's kind of acting as a blocker. But you can actually get through that and open up a new avenue towards the enemy base. Again, as usual, this is among my first commentaries of Stormgate, so any kind of feedback is welcome. And of course, I greatly appreciate you pressing like and subscribing to the channel in case you are enjoying this video. Now, a very different approach over here from PartinG compared to the previous game. He actually decided to split his Brute into Fiends in an effort to chase down this one scout from the opponent. And here's why this is important. You see, these Fiends are very quick, and they could potentially make it to the enemy resource camp. And I think PartinG wants to deny that. He might also try to hit the Bobs, but I think a lot comes down to this resource camp being denied early. I don't think he can steal it necessarily, but even just denying it is very valuable. Trying to get a pick here on the Bobs. He actually does get a Bob pick. Very nice value for those two Fiends. As a side note, of course, Frost Giant is entering its final stage of their Kickstarter campaign, so if you want to pick up some cool Kickstarter-only stuff from Frost Giant related to Stormgate, like, beta early access, special editions, physical gifts, all those kinds of stuff, I will leave a link down in the description of this video so you can check out their Kickstarter page. Brutes now walking across the map here. They are definitely positioning themselves to the left, where you have some of those heal camps, but there is also speed camp in the middle. It's a little difficult to see on the minimap, but just halfway between the top and the bottom on the left side of the map, there is a speed camp, and that's actually very valuable for either of these factions. I'm actually wondering if PartinG is actually heading towards that. Yeah, there's the speed camp as I'm talking about it. Vision camp is also available, which is actually a neat thing to have around this area. But it's not like vital. It's more about, hey, if you can take it, might as well take it, because every kind of information is valuable. Those Brutes marching across, they're heavily damaged. They might be tempted to go towards that heal camp, but that has already been taken. So was the resource camp, so these heavily damaged Brutes will likely just split up into Fiends here. Indeed, they do. They jump on that one Exo, and, Exos are fairly fragile, so you can actually do a lot of damage to individual Exos with Fiends, and I think that might have been a Habitat. I actually missed what building that was. It was either a Habitat or a Mech Bay, whichever it was, could pick up by these Fiends. A building in construction taken out. It might have been a Mech Bay, actually, just come to think of it. Fiends still running circles around the enemy here, trying to find some good value targets, like those Exos. But it has been cleaned up now, 2 bases for each of these players, but worker count seems to be in the favor of PartinG right now. He has already 10 workers on that second Luminite deposit. And there's a 3rd base as well. One thing I'm noticing with PartinG playing Infernals is that he's extremely quick to expand. Obviously, my sample size is somewhat small because we had only a limited amount of games played on this branch of the game. But in general, just comparing it to the previous sets that I've cost, I feel like PartinG is extremely quick when it comes to expanding with the Infernals, and that has been the theme in the previous game as well as in this one. Of course, expanding with all these shrines also gives you the Shroud aura, something that's going to give a lot of white health to those units, and it's something that can help a lot when it comes to defending against this aggression. Aggression that isn't really coming right now. Yeah, like, Habitat and Mech Bay look fairly similar if you don't have more than a second to look at the building. So I'm fairly certain that it was a Mech Bay that got taken out by those initial Fiends. And now the Siege Camp is gonna get taken by PartinG. He isn't really being aggressed, and notice how all of his troops are essentially fully stacked up on white health. Because of this, he is not going to lose the actual health of these troops. He might lose a little here for some of his units, but most of these guys will be essentially undamaged here. One Brute is going to have to just split up, but everything else survives with minor damage taken. And he's going to secure himself this lovely siege weapon, the catapult, which is still a kind of placeholder-looking unit, to be honest. Now, that catapult can be scary because it's actually very good to take out static defenses as well. And in general, it's very good to dish out some area damage, which you can combine very nicely with these gaunts as well. Catapult lagging behind a little. Turret, of course, helping quite a bit here. There's the catapult. Nice little hit. It's crawling all the way up. It's a little undefended here, but I don't think the axes will commit against this. Some of those have been infested now, and that means that we are going to see fiends appearing, and that's where that catapult comes into play. It is the tool to take out these static defenses with, and this is something that makes this entire defense substantially weaker for Coffee. Catapult still working wonders here. Overcharged Bob's taking this fight, but you're fighting enemy troops and workers, and that is usually not a good recipe this late in the game, especially when you only have 2 bases against the 3 from PartinG. Now that second command post is being taken out as well, the troops are just nowhere to be found for Coffee, and it looks like we are heading into a 2-0 scoreline over here. PartinG just looking unstoppable right now. He's on 3 bases, just 1 base now from his opponent. Those barracks are being taken out. Really, I feel like Coffee is just typing GG at this point because barely anything is happening from his side, and indeed, with the feed just ending abruptly, we know that game 2 is over. PartinG taking game number 2 as well. Heading into game number 3 here, we jump into Secluded Grove. Once again, PartinG is going to be playing the purple Infernals, and we are going to have spawning in on the top right, Coffee playing as the Infernals, apparently. So double Infernals, Coffee changing things up here. This is the first time in any of the sets of cost that were provided by Frost Giant where a player actually switches a faction. So I would expect that players won't really do that once the game releases and players get familiar with 1 or 2 factions. I feel like we're going to see something very similar to StarCraft, where players just main a single faction. But in this early period, I expect some players to experiment with multiple factions, because, you know, you choose one of those factions based on your playstyle, your preferences, but you never know, maybe something actually works out better than you anticipated. So I definitely value when players try to mix things up, especially given that PartinG was very, very dominant in the first 2 games against the Vanguard. Now, I feel like the problem here is that you're kind of trying to fight fire with fire. PartinG was extremely powerful with the Infernals. I'm not sure if Infernals is the faction that's going to take him out. Obviously, if we had a 3rd faction, this would be a different story. But right now, we only have 2 factions, so if you struggled against the Infernals at Vanguard, your only other option when it comes to a faction choice is just going for Infernals yourself and playing a mirror. Now in this mirror we have 2 bases for both of these players, and essentially an identical start here by both. Brutes are out, and a 2nd base is on the way for both of these players as well. Now, on this map, you do have a line-of-sight camp very close to your starting base, so pay attention to players trying to take that, and providing defensive vision, as well as potentially offensive vision if they can pin the enemy inside the enemy base. So, yeah, as you see, these brutes are heading out towards that one vision camp. It's going to be quite valuable. Chicken just casually chilling and sleeping there. And if PartinG can actually take this position, he's going to be the one taking the vision camp, and that's going to be immensely valuable information. Nice little back and forth here by the players. Tight micro, but it looks like PartinG actually has the upper hand in this one. He's going to force his opponent all the way back. New Brood on the way from Coffee, so he's going to be able to repel this for the time being, but all that PartinG wants is this vision camp. He aggroes the chicken. This could be good timing for Coffee, though. Right now, PartinG is fighting the chicken, So he could get backstabbed over here, but looks like the vision camp is going to be taken. And with a new brute arriving here for PartinG, his opponent, Coffee, just gets pushed back into his base once again. Double Conclaves on the way. Is that triple? It's at least 2 Conclaves. Might be a third as well. I kind of missed that. But with Conclaves coming in, Gaunts can be a thing, but also Magmadons. We've actually seen a combination of Gaunts and Magmadons being utilized in many of these Infernal games. And I'm actually curious how heavily players will be leading into Gaunts over here. They, of course, can spread infestation. They also are a range unit that you can micro very effectively. But it's also something that gets killed very easily, so if you get wrapped, you can easily lose your army here. 2 bases still for both. I expect PartinG to move out for a third one very soon, just judging by the playstyle that he has had in the previous games. And I think that Imp is heading to the south to expand with a 3rd shrine, so first for a 3rd base is once again going to be PartinG. He's also dropping a Shroud Stone right next to it, so he's not going to mess around. It's not just a simple expansion left alone. He's going to have a Shroud Stone, a static defensive emplacement that's going to help with the defense here. Speaking of Shroud Stones, that choke point is going to be controlled by Coffee. Also love how he is expending his Shroud Aura with that. So even if he starts moving out of his base, in that little choke point he has the ability to recharge that white health, and that can be a deciding factor in many of these engagements. No 3rd base from him just yet. He actually went for a meat farm back at home. He doesn't really need it right now, it's not like he's being aggressed, but if there was any raid coming in from PartinG, that meat farm could come in handy. Shrine not yet complete, so the imps are actually traveling long distance here, so... Yep, now they should be able to drop off right here. There we go. Slow game here. So I feel like I was just thinking about the state of the game right now, and one thing I'm kind of noticing is that I feel like for the status of the game, or for the state of the game, Coffee is playing a little too defensive. He is playing 2 bases against 3 in a mirror matchup, but I just don't see him trying to cut into that deficit, right? 3 bases versus 2. He's got a serviceable and formidable army, but I just feel like in a mirror matchup, you guys are making the same units, but your opponent kind of feels like he's actually 1 step ahead of you. 3rd base coming in a very different spot compared to his opponent, though. You see, PartinG took the other Luminite deposit close to his base, whereas it's going to be a much more isolated spot here for Coffee as he's getting pushed by PartinG here. There is 1 Magmadon moving in as well. Nice little stun. A lot of Gaunts firing from the backline as well, spreading infestation. The Magmadon gets taken out, but numbers looking good here. And it looks like he is able to grab all of these Gaunts. Now this is valuable. This is very, very valuable, because with that, most of the army here from PartinG is gone. As I'm saying that, I think he took out some of those troops that were infested, and that is a big game changer over there. Infested troops getting killed and then turning into a bunch of fiends. What a momentum switch. Very, very sudden. It actually happened in that forest, so it was a little difficult to see, and colors are still a little hard to distinguish between teal and pink in these fights. But that is a massive shift of momentum over here from PartinG. Moving in with a bunch of fiends. He does have new Magmadons coming in as well, and You know, static defense is gone, not a lot of troops here for Coffee. This is just looking grim for him right now, and there it is. End of the recording means GG was called here by Coffee. PartinG really showing why he is one of the best players in Stormgate right now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how good he's going to be once the game becomes publicly available. Of course, a lot of high-level players from various RTSs are already playing the game, but things will really get spicy once the game becomes publicly available, and really, anybody can jump on a ladder, try themselves. It's going to be interesting to see how the power balance is going to look like on the ladder, and of course in tournaments. So hopefully you've enjoyed this cast. If you did, please consider pressing a like on this video, subscribing to the channel. Those metrics help me greatly. And hopefully I will see you in the next cast.